Me hit okay. I'm happy to be here tonight, Hugo. Happy to be here to share what I know about probates. And gosh, I wish I had had someone to help me when I first got started. So for those, I think pretty much probably everybody knows a little bit about me, but I've been investing for 2 decades. And since about 2008, I have focused on probates because, in my estimation, they are the best source of off-market deals. I think we've got a little bit of a, I'm not wanting to move on the slides here. We're stuck. Let's see here. No, okay, there we go. Had a little bit of a lag. So we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about why invest in probates. We're going to talk about marketing to probates. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my course at the end, but I've also got a great freebie for you if you stay till the end. I'm going to give you completely free my probate investing starter kit, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that going forward. So tonight we're going to talk about why I love probates and why I think it should definitely be one of your strategies. It doesn't matter really if you're a wholesaler, a fix and flip person, or a buy and hold person. Probates is simply a lead source. And we're going to talk about a broad overview of the probate process. We're going to talk about mindset. This is the #1 stumbling block with people and probates. So we're going to talk about your mindset and how to fix that. And we're going to talk about their mindset so that you understand clearly where these people, where they're coming from at this time in their life. And we'll also go over the main reason the heirs put off selling the property, because oftentimes there's a lag between the time someone passes away and the time when they actually sell the property. I'm going to talk a little bit about the legal aspects and the terminology of probate, finding the leads, and finally marketing to probates. But I want you to understand right from the get-go, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, that you do not need to know a bunch of legal stuff to work in probates. That's why God made attorneys. So you do need to understand the process and a little bit about the terminology so that you can have an intelligent conversation with these people. But I love probates because they are some of the most motivated sellers on the planet. Now, they almost never want this property that they've inherited, and sadly, you will never run out of leads with probates. They have a problem and you can solve it. And their problem is that they've inherited a house that they are going to almost always have to sell in order to close the estate. And once you understand the process, you'll see why this is really a gold mine of leads. And they are off-market deals, so there's a lot less competition for these deals. Now, when you talk about off-market deals, these are deals that are not readily available online. Oftentimes, they can only be sourced locally, which means they can be a lot harder to get your hands on. Sorry, folks, I've got a little bit of a cold. And it makes them very desirable. So of all the off-market strategies, which might be absentee owners, things like vacants, things like code violations, different things. In most areas, your area being one of the few exceptions, they have to be sourced locally, so it makes them harder to get and it makes your competition so much less. Now, why are these sellers so motivated? Well, I touched on that. Because they've inherited a house that they don't want. They just want the cash sitting in the house. And if this house needs a lot of repairs and or updates, they don't want to put their money in the house, even if they have the money to put in the house. But you need to understand the business that you're actually in. You're not in the house business. You're in the problem-solving business that just happens to involve houses. And once you understand what this really means to folks in probates, then you will really be able to begin to see how you can help so many people in this niche. Now, first, I want to go over the steps in the probate process because this is where people get really tripped up. Now, mind you, an attorney's going to have a whole lot of other steps in here. So we're going to do the broad overview of the steps as they pertain to an investor. So the first thing that happens is, of course, someone passes away. The next thing is there is a petition for probate. And we'll go over all of these a little bit more, but it's got to be decided who's in charge. Who is the person that the investor talks to about the property? It's important that you get really clear on who this person is and who you need to be having conversations with. So this is decided by the will or by the court. Now, what do I mean by that? If there's a will, the person that's deceased will have said, I'm this person as the executor. They appoint the executor. In the absence of a will, we'll talk about that in a little bit, then the court's going to decide who does what, who is the decision maker and who's in charge. So once somebody dies and the probate is opened, that's the first step and the second step. Then the court will decide, if there's a will, the will will be presented and it will be validated that this person is indeed, it's a valid will and that this person is the executor. In the absence of that, the court will appoint an administrator. Once that is done, the assets are sold to pay any creditors, and this is often at a deep discount. So this is real property and personal property. So it's houses, property, commercial assets, anything, personal property, boats. The heirs cannot inherit what they're going to get, and if it's in the will, unless these steps are taken. Once the assets are sold, the creditors get paid. So who are the creditors? The creditors are anyone that money is owed to. It could be a mortgage. It could be a home equity line of credit that this deceased has taken out. It would certainly be funeral expenses and any legal expenses. But generally speaking, it's any outstanding bills that can be charged back to the estate. And here's the point I want you to really understand. You see who's down here at the bottom of the list. The heirs get what is left. So the heirs are often very motivated for investors to buy their property because it means they get their money sooner. That's just really the short answer. All of these things have to happen. If someone has left something in a will or without a will and they go through the normal court process, they don't get what they've inherited until all of these other steps have taken place. And finally, the estate is closed. Now, this is really the shortened version, but this is all you need to understand about probate. This is the probate process. And at the end, the executor, they have legal responsibilities to watch over the estate, to watch over the money, to make sure everything is right. And then they have to make a final accounting of this is what we sold, this is how much money we got, and it's, and so forth. So let's go back to how it's decided if there's an executor or an administrator. And by the way, both of these terms are used interchangeably as the personal representative, the person who will represent the deceased. So when it comes to who's in charge, like I said before, it depends. If there's a will, that's called testate. And that person will have been chosen by the deceased to be in charge of their estate. Now, if there is no will, that's called intestate, and the court appoints an administrator. Both of these terms are interchangeable, as I said. And the duties and the responsibilities are exactly the same. So one doesn't have more weight than the other. It just means this is the decision maker. This is the person that when you're writing a real estate contract, it won't be to the estate of and then the name of the deceased. It will be to John Smith, who is the executor of the estate, or Mary Jones, who is the administrator of the estate. That's whose name goes on the real estate contract. Now, we talked a little bit about assets, and it's, you probably know that the difference between these. So real property is property, it's land, it's lakes and ponds, oil rights, mineral rights. Anything that is attached to the property goes with the property. So a barn, obviously anything like that, anything that's attached to the property. Now, personal property is anything that is movable. That is bank accounts, stocks and bonds, jewelry, furnishings. It's everything else. So that's pretty self-explanatory. But when it comes to disposing of things in the estate, it's possible that in the will, the deceased left all their jewelry to their daughter, or they left their boat to their son. Some things will be designated in a will and won't have to be sold, but most of the time the assets are going to need to be sold to pay the creditors. Now, there's a process in every state, and you don't need to know that process. You just need to know that there is a process so that these creditors have to be notified so that they have a chance to, if there's outstanding money. For instance, if the deceased had credit cards or whatever the debts were. Every state has a slightly different procedure, but some states require you to, I know this is true and was true in Chicago when I looked it up. They had to publish a notice of the probate case to let the creditors know once about the death of the person that has passed away. They had to publish it once a week for 3 consecutive weeks. Then the creditors only have 6 months to file a claim or they're out of luck. So you can see where having a probate attorney is a valuable thing because they stay on top of all these things. Hopefully the family that you're dealing with has a probate attorney. But the notice to creditors comes out, and there has to be some mechanism for the people finding out that they're, that these debts are due, and that they need to place a claim with the estate. So when you're going to run into a problem with this, it's usually because the family doesn't know how to do the process. So going back over the steps one more time, this is really pretty straightforward. Someone dies, there's a petition for probate. It's decided who will be in charge, who's the decision maker. The next steps are the assets are sold, the creditors are paid, and the heirs get what's left, and then the estate is closed. So if you come across one, I get asked this question a lot. If the estate is closed, is it time to buy the property? No, you've missed the boat. The time you can buy the house in an estate is when the assets are sold. So that's pretty early in the process, actually. Are there ever problems? Well, most of the time over my little bit more than a decade of doing probate investing, there's no problem. It's like a normal transaction. You write a normal contract. Might put a little bit of different language in there with regards to the closing time so that I have plenty, that if there is a delay, you're not going to be out of contract. But, generally speaking, it is just like any other deal. But every now and then there will be a problem, and it's almost always because the family is trying to settle the estate without an attorney. So can you do that? Yes, you can. You can go down to the courthouse. The family can go to the courthouse and they can get all the paperwork and file the paperwork. They're told the steps. But it's been my experience over these years that this is when you have the problems, when the family's trying to do it, because there are things have to be done in a certain order, and if they're not done in a certain order, often they have to start over in the process. So just know that most of the time it's just perfectly fine. So I wanted to take a minute and talk about mindset, because this is by far one of the biggest stumbling blocks for investors. The 4 main reasons investors avoid probates and are picking this as a niche, I should say, are these. Number 1 is they don't understand the probate process themselves. So I have to tell you, folks, you think it's a crowded world out there for probate investing. It's really not. Your competition, the average investor who runs across a probate deal or attempts to do a probate deal without the knowledge you have from being taught the correct way to do it, they're not really your competition because they don't understand the probate process. The second thing is they don't know how to find the leads. Now, your situation is a little bit different in that you have a killer lead source right there under your noses. In my area, the leads are published in the newspaper. You can also look some things up online, but there's nowhere to get a list of leads. But in many areas, people actually still have to go to the courthouse. So there are varying degrees of should I say, online presence. And there are a whole lot of places that have little to no online presence. So investors don't really know where to look for the leads. And once they get the leads, they don't understand how to market to these folks. And this is a big one. If you try to market to these people without understanding how the process works, without knowing how to speak their language, and without really marketing to them in the proper way, you're going to turn these people off and you're not going to get the lead. But the biggest reason that investors avoid probates is their mindset. So they think it's creepy. I've had people tell me it's creepy to profit from someone else's death. You know, they don't know how to talk about death with the sellers. Well, the sellers are 100% aware of where they are in this process. And they don't understand that while this is a sad time, these people have a problem. They've got this estate to settle, and they have to take care of the business of settling the estate. And it is something that is dumped in their lap on top of everything else. And this involves disposing of their loved ones' belongings. And if there's one thing you take away from this presentation tonight, I want you to understand that these people really need your help. Now, some of the houses will be listed on the MLS, but the rest of them are up for grabs for investors. A lot of times, there'll be houses that are not in that bad of a shape. They just need speed here. They can't afford to keep the house heated in the winter in Chicago, or they can't afford to keep the grass cut because the house is an hour away. There are many reasons why these people are motivated, why these particular sellers are very motivated to sell. And the condition of the house is only one of those things. So the sellers have had, first of all, they're sad, and they've had someone has passed away. They're confused about the process themselves. So often you have a situation where the sellers, they're lacking confidence in the process and their knowledge of the process. And then you have an investor that comes in and doesn't know how to work with, the probates, and you end up with one big ball of confusion. And then you have a situation where the heirs cannot afford to do repairs and the updates that are needed to list the house on the MLS. So they are super motivated sellers. Yeah, they have a big problem. And when you can show up to help them with their problem, they are so happy. These are off-market deals, and this is your competition here. Folks, your competition is lazy. Most of them are not going to go to the trouble to do probates. Now, the heirs there's often a big gap between the time someone passes away and the estate is open because they are busy. Like I said, they've gotten this problem of settling this estate. They have a life, they have a job, they have kids, they have soccer practice, and then they may have a house that needs a lot of work. It may need major repairs. So they have to get themselves in the right mindset to begin with. They have to get to a place in the process where they're ready to move forward. And people always say, well, how long is that going to take? Well, it's going to take until they're ready. They have to get in the right mindset, and it may be months down the road. So when someone opens a probate, you don't need to be concerned about when someone passes away. When someone opens the probate, that is a sign to you that they're ready to move on with selling the house. That's your sign, or that's your clue. But one thing that holds them back is the guilt over having to get rid of their folks' belongings or their loved ones.
Yeah, okay. No, you can. Okay, feel free.
Their loved ones' belongings. So there's so much stuff in the house, and you can solve this problem by offering to clean out the house. So these folks are looking for a hassle-free solution They're looking for quick cash. And remember that you have much less competition than on the MLS. So when you write your contract, you offer to clean out the house for them. If they don't, then they don't have the guilt of being worried about getting rid of mom's sofa or dad's whatever. It's a time, and I know this from personal experience, it's a time where you feel very guilty getting rid of things that you have no use for, that maybe don't have any monetary value, but that was your mom's or your dad's or your sister's or brother's prized possession. So when you can take this stumbling block off their plate, they are really happy that you're there to help them. But it comes back to this, the number one reason I think you should choose probates is because you will never run out of leads. Now, sadly, and this is true, sadly, this is the case. If you think about other strategies, you get REOs.
We already signed in, though. So
I've got some feedback here, guys. Somebody has got their mic on. Okay, so you'll never run out of leads with probates. They're not market driven. They don't depend on the economy. Good market, bad markets, you can always use, probates are always a good strategy. So when it comes down to the houses in probates, you'll have nice houses. Those are the ones that are probably going to be listed on the MLS. You'll have your dogs, as I call them, and they're the ones that are prime investor deals. They're going to need a lot of work, or maybe a fair amount of updates. And then there's the maybes, and these are somewhat market driven, only to the extent that in a seller's market like it is now, they can sell houses in worse condition on the MLS. In a buyer's market, you will get really nice houses that need almost no work done to them at all. But in any market, these people will, it really doesn't depend solely on the condition of the house. As I said, it depends on their motivation, how much they need the money, how quickly they want to sell, and just get this whole thing off their plate. So you have the opportunity to buy houses of just about every kind of house. If you're dealing with an absentee owner, they may want to sell a nice house to an investor. So it all goes back to their motivation. So we talked about that. By market driven, these are not affected by the economy. Probates will always be there. As I said, sadly, you're going to get a new lead source every month. Now, I did want to touch on the legal aspects of probate just a little bit. So what effect does this have on you and your business? This whole thing that you need to know about the legal aspects of probate? Well, my answer is none, absolutely none. Do you need to understand the legality of probate? The basic legal process that we went over, and we talked about the steps in the probate process. Well, the answer is yes. You do need to understand that so that you can have an intelligent conversation with the seller, with the person, that is in charge here. But you don't need to worry about, has it all been done properly? Because when you send a contract over to your closing attorney, or if you're working through a probate attorney, they're going to discover any problems that exist. So you don't have to worry about that. You need this knowledge so that you can talk to sellers and so that you can show up as the expert, which 99% of your competition will simply not be able to do. Understand that except for a few exceptions, the house must be sold in order to close the estate. In order for the heirs to get what they are inheriting, this property is going to be sold. So do all houses go through probate? Now, there are some instances when they don't. If you will Google small estates and then your estate, it will tell you what is considered to be a small estate in your state. Let's say we're talking about Illinois. It might be under a certain dollar amount. It might be houses where there's no property. Some things that are held jointly are in a trust. I'm sure you've probably seen leads come up in a trust. These often are inherited properties, but they haven't gone through the probate process because they're in a trust. When the beneficiary has been named, those are things that won't go through probate. Remember I said if something is willed directly to someone, it may not go through probate. I'm going to grab a drink of water here. Okay. Now, something I did want to touch on is payable on death bank accounts. Those do not go through probate, and this is something you should really know about. I'm just going to touch on it. But did you know that if you can go to your bank and have your bank accounts transferred to over to someone upon your death so that they escape probate? Most people didn't know that. They escape probate. That means they escape taxes. So it might be something you want to look into as far as your estate planning goes. But these are things, there are others, but these are just some things that do not go through probate. Now, the answer is yes, if the assets are owned solely, not jointly. So if you have a married couple, they don't have maybe each of you owns property in your own name, that's going to definitely end up in probate. If the assets together are worth more than $100,000 in Illinois, and this amount varies by state, you can tell I've done a little research on your state. It's much less in some states. You know, this is very much a state-driven thing. So if there's no will, the court will decide who gets what. We talked about that. If there's no will, the court's going to appoint an administrator, and they're going to determine how things go. And if the will is contested, of course, then that's a yes on that one. I don't want you to get too hung up on this because knowledge is power. Once you have the knowledge, then you know how to speak the language of probate, you know how to talk to these people. This is a niche where you can make a lot of money over time. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of terminology, but I did just want to touch on a few things that I get asked a lot, and that is, you know, what's probate? Well, it's the legal process of administering a will, which is overseen by the probate court. In the absence of the will, you know, we've talked about how the court handles that, but matters concerning wills and estates are handled by the probate court in most areas. This is all the assets in the estate. We've talked about the kinds of property. We've talked about testate and intestate. Testate is when they have a will. Intestate is when there is no will. We've also talked about the types of property and what happens to them in probate. We talked about the executor and the administrator, jointly referred to as a personal representative. You just need to remember that these people are the decision makers. The executor is almost always someone that was trusted by the deceased. And I would have to encourage everyone, if you don't have a will, you should have a will, and you should choose someone to be your executor, and it should be someone that you trust. Otherwise, the court's going to decide what happens and all of that. So you've got your decedent, obviously is the person that has died. The estate is everything. Everything that this person owned goes into an estate. Some things are not are outside of the estate, like life insurance policies and things of those sorts. The heir is obviously the person who's going to inherit. And I just want to touch on this. And I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney, but you need to know that there will be a tax return required for this estate. So why should you care? There's only one reason you should care, and that is because it establishes another timeline that these folks have to meet. You know, they've got the timeline for the IRS. We all know the IRS has us on timelines, right? But you just need to know this for the purpose of knowing that folks have to eventually get this done. You can buy the house when the assets are sold. As I said, this is fairly early in the process. So we've gotten down here to this step where the assets are sold. Now you've got this money in a pile in the bank. the creditors are going to get paid, and the heirs are going to get what's left. So it really is that simple. Let's talk a little bit about getting the leads. Now, you've got, as I said, you've got a really unique situation with ChicagoDealVault. What we would give to have ChicagoDealVault in Louisville, Kentucky, and most other areas. But know that there are only 4 pieces of information that you need to work in probates: the name and address of the deceased and the name and address of the executor or the administrator. That's it. You're not going to need a case number. You're not going to need any of that stuff. While it may be available to you, and that's fine if it is, that's not something you have to look for. It's not something that you have to have. Now, in my world, there are 3,300 plus counties in the U.S. Some of them are online. Some of them are in the newspaper, as I said, or other legal publications. Some people go to the courthouse. Some people buy leads, which I don't recommend because they're rarely very good leads. And you have ChicagoDealVault, which is a gold mine, folks. I cannot tell you, you know, I'm not affiliated with ChicagoDealVault, but it is an awesome service. I know these people, and if you don't take advantage of getting your leads through ChicagoDealVault, it's just plain silly. You need to do that. They have really, it's not just probates. They have all kinds of leads, and that's a conversation for you to have with Hugo. But I can tell you this, I give them my full recommendation and just wish that I had them here. So they have probates, they have absentee owners, all these other types of deals that you can get, leads that you can get through ChicagoDealVault. So once you have your leads, and you're getting yours the easy way, everybody else is pretty much getting them the hard way. Once you have your leads, what do? Well, then you have to market to probates. Now, what shouldn't you do in marketing to probates? There is one thing you shouldn't do, and that is call people up on the telephone. I like to say somebody's mama has died. Don't do that. I know of people that say, I'm calling from obituaries, I want to be first. Folks, first doesn't have a place when you're working with probates. As I said, these people are grief-stricken. They're on their own timeline. They have to get ready to sell the property. So what you need to do instead is to use direct mail. You use direct mail to market to these people. So there's a 5-step process when you have marketed to them. I'm going to circle back to this in a minute, direct mail. But the process is that you find a house and you put it under contract. Just the same as any other property, as I said. And I will send the house, I'll send that contract over to my closing company, to my attorney. We close with attorneys in Kentucky. If I'm wholesaling it, I'll go ahead and find a buyer and have them put the house under contract, and I send that contract over to the attorney. Now for me, you know, if I'm wholesaling the house, I'm going to double close in Kentucky because it's so cheap to do that, and I like a nice clean paper trail. I like it all to be nice and clean. I talk to investors in other areas. New Jersey is one that comes to mind where if they double close, it's going to cost them $6,000 or $8,000. And obviously they're not going to do that. They're going to assign the contract. But the process is just, if you look at this process, you're going to see that it's just like any other process for buying any other house. If you are buying, just a house you found whatever way, you're just going to put it over under contract and send that over to your closing company. If you're going to flip the house, if you're going to, if it's going to be a buy and hold, or you're going to rehab it, it doesn't matter. Whatever your process is that you normally follow, it's going to be the same with probates. So, like I said, I put it under contract. This is my procedure. Find it, put it under contract, send it over to my attorney. If you're wholesaling the house, I send the A to B, the contract where I'm purchasing the house, over right away. I want the attorney to find the problems with the house right now. Now, I said before, most of the closings go just without any problems at all. But one time I had one that went 5 months. So that is a rare occasion that happens, but every now and then it does happen. And this case was the same as all the other times, when the few times that I've had it happen, and that's because the family was trying to do it themselves. Normally, if you've got an attorney involved, you're not going to ever have that happen to you. If I'm wholesaling the house, I'll find a buyer, put it under contract, go ahead and send, I'm just going to flip through these. I'll send the contract over to the attorney, and then I go to closing. So it's the same. That's the 5-step process for, doing a probate deal. So where do I find my best buyers? At my local RIA. I've always found my best buyers at my local RIA. So you have a wealth of RIAs there in Chicago, and you should definitely take advantage of those. How many buyers do you need? Honestly, 4 to 6 probably. In all the years I've been investing, I have sold probably 90% of the properties I've sold to the same 4 to 6 people. A landlord or two that were actively adding properties, still adding properties today. You need to know where they buy and what they buy. And your rehabbers, you only need a few really active rehabbers if you're wholesaling houses. Now, if you're going to keep the houses and fix them up yourself and sell them yourself, or hold them yourself, then you are obviously the buyer, at least in the short term. So people think when they're wholesaling that they can't wholesale probates, and that is false. You can wholesale probates, and it's just like any other wholesale deal. So let's talk about marketing for a minute. You know how I like marketing. So you're going to build a list, or you're going to get it from ChicagoDealVault if you live in Chicago. That's what you're going to do. You're going to send a direct mail letter every month. Now, that's not every 2 weeks or 6 weeks or every other month or whenever. You're going to mail everybody every month. That is how you get the deals. And you're going to scrub your list no longer than every 4 to 6 months. So what does that mean? In my area, I go into the tax assessor site. It's called the PVA here. I go in there. I don't actually do it. Someone does it for me. But they go in there and they see if the house has changed ownership on the tax assessor site. Is it a perfect system? No, because there's a little bit of a lag, at least here. But if you're doing this regularly, you could take out houses that are sold. You will then only spend your marketing dollars on the ones that are still available. But I have to tell you here, you're going to have to be patient, and you're going to want to send a nurture sequence of letters. It's very important that you get this point. You're not just going to bombard them with, somebody said 4 mail pieces in a month. There's absolutely no point to that. Remember, when they open the estate, that's the sign that they are ready to move forward. So that's when you start marketing to them. When they open the estate, you're going to mail to them a letter every month. For how long? Until the house is sold. Till you buy the house, till someone else buys the house, or it's no longer available. Maybe a family member decides to keep it. But the fortune is in the follow-up here. It really is. To send, if you go into this with the intent of only sending, somebody said, I'm going to send 4 touches or 5 touches. My question to you is, why would you do that? If the house is still available, that's how long you need to mail to these folks. Until, as long as the house is available, you mail to them. And in general, this is not a hard, fast rule, but in general, in this market, probates will, I call it age out for the lack of a better term. In 12 to 15 months, the vast majority of them will be disposed of. They'll be sold. Now, there will be exceptions. There'll be some that go longer, but just know that you have to be patient, and you have to nurture these people along the path. It's kind of like, let them know that you're there, and you'll be there for them when they're finally ready to sell the house. So let's go with this real quick. Mail everyone every month. We talked about that. 81% of your deals will come at or beyond your fifth mailing. So think about that for a minute. 90% of the people will stop mailing on or before the third mailing. So can you see that just by staying in the game, you are going to be ahead of almost all of your competition? So you start mailing when the probate's open, and you mail to these folks until you buy the house, someone else buys the house, or it's no longer available. Remember that most of your competition, your so-called competition, is not really your competition. They're simply not going to go, they're just not going to stay on this path and do this for the long term. Now, I want you to think about this too. People totally forget about branding, and I'm just going to bring it up here because this is not a branding class, but you should be building your brand. If you look at ChicagoDealVault, they have a brand. Chicago RIA has a brand. I have a personal brand, because marketing is how you get deals, but branding is why they choose you over your competition. I want you to really let that stick. You have to have a website. You have to have an online presence. It is no longer optional. It is absolutely necessary, because you're not going to be the one that's chosen if you don't have it. So the seller's process today, you used to be the seller would get your marketing piece, or they would hear about you one way or another. Today, it's a little bit different. They'll go and they'll either get your marketing piece, or they will go online and they will search for help. They'll do one of those two things. If they're searching online for you, then that is a hotter lead than another kind of a lead. The next thing that they do is they go online and they check you out. Now, it used to be this step did not exist. They got your mail piece and they decided by that mail piece or by hearing about you if they were going to contact you about buying their house. Today, you've got this step in the middle. So they hear about you, or they get your mail piece, then they go look for you online. They're looking for your website. They're going to look at your Facebook. They're going to see if you're on the other social media platforms or what they can find about you online. They're going to evaluate all of that and create a short list of who they're going to call. And whether you make the cut is going to depend largely on your online presence. And that is the same for probates as it is true for the other strategies. And it's the thing that will seal the deal for you, this brand that you've built with your online presence. Marketing plan, do you need one? Heck yeah, you need one. And it's really easy to create a simple marketing plan. There's really 5 steps. So the first step is to decide on your strategies. And for this conversation, we're going to say that probates are one of your strategies. And then you're going to break how you're going to market to them down into steps. I'm going to get a list from ChicagoDealVault. Then I'm going to send a mail piece. You're going to go down step by step and break it all down into steps. The next thing is, what's your budget? You got to have a budget in mind, because you're better off to mail 100 people consistently every month, every 30 days, and mail them, go the whole course with these 100 people than you are to take a few people, or to take a lot of people, let's say 1,000 people, and mail them 1, 2, or 3 times. So know what your budget is and mail those consistently. Schedule everything on a calendar. Schedule everything on a great big wall calendar. And then you need to be thinking about what can you outsource to streamline the process. So that is huge here. You're going to get to a point where you cannot do it all. And this is where outsourcing comes in and finding some help to get through all of this. But these are the basic steps for creating a simple marketing plan. The biggest thing that will keep you on track is the great big wall calendar. Old school wall calendar totally works. The first year I used a big wall calendar in my office up on the wall, I doubled my business that year. Wow, that was a long run of talking. So I want to tell you a little bit about my course, and I'm going to tell you about how you can get my freebie. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm going to shoot through the modules. It's called Probate Investing Simplified, and what my guarantee is with this course is that you can become a probate investing expert in 6 weeks. You really can, because you will have all of the information that you need to work in this niche. So the course helps you to understand the process, all the things we've talked about. You get a strong foundation before you spend one dime on direct mail campaigns. And that is something I'm very passionate about. I don't want you to spend money that you don't have to spend, and you will become the known expert in your area. Now, what's in the modules? I'm just going to run through these, as I said, but it's everything you need to build a successful probate investing business. You're going to get all the knowledge you need so that at the end of 6 weeks, you can show up on any doorstep to look at a house in probate and show up as the expert. So module 1, you're going to go through the process in great detail, much more detail than we did tonight, but just understand that you'll have the knowledge that when someone asks you a question, you will be able to hold your own with any seller. The leads, we're going to talk about what you do with the leads. As I said, you can get them a number of different ways. You can get them through ChicagoDealVault, certainly, which is what I recommend. But you're going to learn what do you do with the leads once you get them. You know, even once you've got the leads, what's the next step? What do you do with the leads? The third module is going to be all about learning all the language of probate. And I got to tell you, folks, this is a really necessary module, but it's boring. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, it's a boring thing that you have to know. It's kind of like being an engineer and needing to know the terminology, or being a real estate investor and not knowing the terminology. You simply must know the terminology to be able to have an intelligent conversation with these people. There's just no other way to say it. Marketing, and this is really the one of the most valuable modules in the course. Marketing is how you get these leads that turn into deals. This is how you're going to make money, and I'm going to show you how to market to probate so that no one gets upset, so that you are seen as a trusted resource rather than a feared person, you know, someone who's got to kind of hide behind back in the shadows because you're marketing to someone who's lost a loved one. Module 5, we're going to work on the mindset, and you're going to know how to talk to sellers confidently, how to build rapport with them, and how to let them know that they may not be ready right now, but you'll be there when they are ready to sell the property. Once you learn this skill, once you really have got this down pat, the way, and you get over this whole thing of talking to these people that have lost someone, once you have this mindset shift, it's going to make you a lot of money. And then module 6 is websites, tools, tips, and all the other things you throw in there. You need a website for probates, and I have some sources for getting done for you websites that you don't have to be worried about spending a ton of money on a website. You have to have one. I've got some resources, and I've also got some tips for how you can make your website work better for you. I've also got some bonuses in there, and this one bonus is worth the entire investment, and that's the bonus direct mail module. You're going to learn how to do direct mail the right way, and this information can be used to market to any group of sellers. This is for off-market deals. You could use it for on-market deals. It's designed for off-market deals. But once you know how to do direct mail properly, then you can literally have, build your pipeline full of deals, because I know a lot of folks say it's old school. Listen, it's proven over decades. Direct mail works, and it is the best way to reach these off-market deals. Remember, you don't want to pick up the phone and call these people. And I'm going to give you 2 sets of mail merge ready letter templates. One complete series for investors and for agents out there. I have to tell you, this is a wide open field for agents. There is almost no one specializing in probates. I have some folks in my course that are doing it, but generally they have zero competition. So I've got 2 sets of letters. One is works if you're an investor. The other one is tweaked up slightly because you would be listing the house as opposed to buying the house, but they're mail merge ready that you can so you can take your list and just mail merge the letters. We'll go into a little bit more detail of a probate marketing plan, but I'm going to show you how to actually create a simple marketing plan for probates. Remember, these are off-market deals. This is how you're going to get these deals. And we talk about outsourcing. How do you, I know this seems like it's an overwhelming bunch of information, but I can promise you that the way I drip down the course, it's dripped down a module a week over 6 weeks. You have plenty of time and you work at your own pace. You know, you're not on my schedule, you're on your schedule. We also have bi-monthly calls so that you can get all your questions asked. You get a Zoom link to a reminder to come to the calls, and you can come on the calls forever. So you have the accountability with the calls. We have a private members-only Facebook group where you can ask your questions. You know, you post your deals, people post their wins, they post their frustrations, and you get accountability there. And you have people there that are trying to do the same thing, but in a different area. And so I promise 1 full year of support. Is it really for a year? No, it's actually probably forever. I put that disclaimer in there. Every now and then you get one, you want to go, okay, Bill, your year's up. No, just kidding. No, but it's really, as long as I'm around, you'll still have support. It really is just that simple. You get all your bonuses in week 6, and there's a reason for that. If I were to give you the direct mail letters today, when you signed up, you would be wanting to send direct mail and you would waste a lot of money. So trust me, you'll thank me for this later. I want you to get your foundation down before you spend 1 dime on direct mail. Also, Hugo has thrown in 2 full months of ChicagoDealVault for free. So if you invest in my course, you can get 2 full months of ChicagoDealVault. You can give it a try. You'll see how awesome it is, and then you can continue to get the leads. You can either do it the hard way, which is not having ChicagoDealVault, or you can do it the easy way, which is with ChicagoDealVault. But Hugo has been very generous in giving you 2 full months of ChicagoDealVault. So once you are through the course, you're going to know these things. You're going to understand the process and know how to talk to these sellers, confidently talk to these sellers. You're not going to shy away from having these conversations. That is going to make you a lot of money, being able to have that skill. You're going to have a complete transformation in your mindset. I can promise you that. You're going to be transformed once you really understand that these people need you. And you're going to understand that in your gut. It's not just me saying that, you're going to understand that. You are going to be confident that you're an expert in probates because you're going to know more than 99% of all the other investors out there. They just will not be able to compete with you because they will show up, not know what they're talking about, and that will make you the obvious choice. You're going to have a complete system for marketing to these folks, probates, and to any off-market groups that you would want to, absentee owners. You can take what you learn with this direct mail bonus module, and you can use it for any off-market deals. So you'll have a complete system for marketing to these people, and you won't have to try to figure out what to say in your letters. I have probably gotten hundreds of people that have contacted me saying, I don't know what to say in my letters. Is it too much? You know, is it too little? Oftentimes my comment is it's a little bit too brusque. You need to be very nurturing in your letters, but you're not going to have to worry about any of this. You don't have to figure out any of this on your own. That's the real benefit of investing in a probate investing simplified. That's the biggest thing. You don't have to figure any of this out on your own. We're not going to cover I'm not going to give you a bunch of legal stuff you don't need to know. I'm also not going to tell you there's a magic button where there's no work. You have to do the work. And, you know, that's good news because most of your people that are your so-called competition, they won't do the work. My promise to you is that if you put in the time on this course, You implement what you learn. You follow the steps that are laid out. You will have a complete understanding of how this works. You'll be able to show up as the expert when you talk to sellers. So I get asked, do you have a guarantee? Absolutely. If you've completed the first 2 modules and you decide this isn't for you, you can get a full refund, before you click onto that 3rd module, which is the halfway point. You have, I want to make it fair for you and I want to make it fair for me, but you have to actually complete the modules. I don't want you to get scared off and think this isn't a niche for you, because it absolutely is a niche that anyone can do that wants really an insider track. So what's the investment? Normally you can go on to the course page, probateinvestingsimplified.com. It's $14.97. But I promised Hugo I'd give you all a discount. So I've got a $300 discount just for you, just for the next 48 hours. And when you click on the buy button, you put in the promo code Hugo. That's real simple. So you all will all be able to remember that. I also promised you, here is the link. Just go over to probateinvestingsimplified.com. And I also promised you all that I would give you a freebie, which I'm going to tell you how to get that. It's called my Probate Investing Starter Kit. So what's in the starter kit? I've got a terminology sheet in there. I have a sample letter in there for you. And I have a graphic that's the probate investing roadmap that looks like this. So that'll help you to understand the process. It will help you to remember the process. And I'm a visual learner, so that's why I created this. But you just go to probateinvestingsimplified.com/starter kit. And it is 100% free. I hope you get the resource. Another resource you can get over on my blog, the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog, is I have a marketing plan template over there that you can get completely free. I noticed down here we have got some, looks like some in the chat. I'm not sure if I can open this, Hugo. Okay. Oh, here we go. I can see. Okay. So we got some sound checks in here. What kind of contract do you use in probate? In my area, we use the standard contract, and I think if there's a different contract required in a particular state, you would have to find out about that. But in my area, and in most areas I know, it's just a standard contract. Let's see, what was the name of the organization to get leads? Oh, ChicagoDealVault. And Hugo is the gentleman who so graciously is hosting this tonight and is offering you the 2-month free trial to anyone that signs up for the Probate Investing Simplified course. So you can put the link. Hugo, I don't know if you can type in chat. I can put that down there.
Yeah, if you can, that would be great. Or I can also do it, send it to
everyone. Can you also type it in down there?
Yeah, I can type it in.
Okay. And I'm going to type in here. I had a question. Let's see. Let me see. Let's see. I had a private question here. Okay, so I'm going to put in here the blog name. I should have made a slide with that, Doc. For anyone that wants to get any of the other freebies I mentioned, so you can get the Probate Investing Starter Kit straight through that link that I told you, probateinvestingsimplified.com/starter kit. Hugo has put in the Chicago Deal Vault link. Are there any final questions that I can answer for anybody here while we're still on here? I'd be happy to answer questions. You can type them in the chat, or I don't know if Hugo can I guess that's probably the best way, is just to type them in the chat. Guys, it's been fun. Thanks so much for having me, Hugo. It doesn't look like we have, where's the class? Oh, how's the class held? It's an online class. It's you do it at your own pace, and it's available to you forever. You just log into the portal at probateinvestingsimplified.com. You'll see for the people that are in the course, you work at your own pace. One module is released every week. As I said, this is to keep you on track. You can, you have access to it forever, so it's not going to go anywhere. And actually, I'm getting ready to update the course and put in some more goodies in there. And anybody that's already gotten the course will, of course, get the updates. So no charge for those. You'll get the new version as well as the today version. Hugo, did I omit anything you can think of? Not sure. Can you hear me, Hugo?
Yeah, I can hear you. No, I
Okay.
think you covered everything, Sharon. So I really appreciate it, Sharon. And then do they have your contact information that you can send via the chat or put it on the screen so they can sign up?
Okay, put my contact information. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Or your website, so how they can sign up for the course.
Oh, okay. I'll do that. It's Probate Investing Simplified.
Yes, if you could please type it in, that'll be awesome, so everyone can sign up.
The type tonight. Sorry about that. So that's Probate Investing Simplified. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So, and if you have any questions, let me put my email address in there. Whoops. Let's see here.
Okay. Yeah. Sharon, we really appreciate your knowledge, your time. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us tonight.
Well, I'm excited. I'm always happy to do it, and the honor's all mine, Hugo. Thanks for having me, and thanks to everyone who showed up and stayed on throughout the presentation. I really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a great evening